Thank you, George. You notice right on the beat there? Hello there, gang. This is Victor Joy. We got a lot of goodies there for you. Bring it up there, Lodge. Well, I have made a definite resolution. This is going to be the only show, with the exception of this disclaimer, which you will now hear. It's going to be the only show that you're going to hear on radio that will not mention... What is that holiday? What is this thing we're celebrating today here? Well, all these guys marching around with these funny hats and, these red noses. What was all that about today, anyway? What was that? St. What's, Daddy? Never heard of them. Never heard of them. We are not going to mention it today. Absolutely not. I mean, because, there are so many... in fact, I'll tell you this. I was down in the subway. It was kind of silly. 422 guys were walking along down the subway down at the Times Square station, where the big shuttle is there, or as we in the Bronx would say, the shuttle. And I'm walking through that crowd, and I see stuff written all over the walls, all over these Levy rye bread signs. Those are prime signs for writing stuff on the walls, too. And a bunch of cops were walking along, and they had these green things. I don't know what they were, some kind of flags that they were carrying around down there, and the subway people, they're walking along, just looking at the cops. The cops are carrying the green things, and guys are writing stuff on the subway. And I thought, life goes on. And while I was there, waiting for this automatic train to begin, this is New York, it's an automatic train. I was waiting for the automatic train to begin. A guy comes along, and he hands me a little flyer. They're handing out flyers all the time in the subways these days, like Madame La Jaja or Read Your Palm. Do you have problems? Are you troubled? Would you like to have your financial worries solved? You've seen this stuff. Well, I get this little flyer here, and here is a flyer for a book. It says The Revival of a Lost Art. Revival of a Lost Art in my foot. Lying. The book is called, Don't be caught short in any situation. Learn, quote, how to be a good and graceful and creative liar. This book has proven to be a tremendous asset to students, businessmen, and anybody who knows that they can't get by with, quote, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Your success in business and personal relations can depend on you learning how to be a really good liar. So satisfaction guaranteed. And I'm reading this there, seeing the cops are walking in with their little green flags, and I remember the picture of Mayor Lindsay when he's testing these air-conditioned trains. And did you see the picture of him? It says, tension, are you tied in knots? Behind his head, yeah. And he didn't know that was there. That wasn't planned to be there. Nothing like that was planned. And I'm walking. 5 minutes later, I'm walking along by 6th Avenue. It's a beautiful street, 6th Avenue. Nothing prettier than 6th Avenue in the spring. You can see every cigar butt. You can see every beer can, every bum is etched in sharp, clean, delineated lines against the sunset. And I'm walking along there, digging the scene. And 5 minutes later, I thought, would you give me a little mood music? I've got to set the mood, a little funky stuff, would you please? Beautiful. Do you want to hear a little Jews harp playing to that? Play that thing. That's enough of that. That's enough. Hold it there, Big Charlie. Hold it. That was pretty good, huh? Well, I find myself in an argument, one of these really ridiculous arguments today. Here it is. It's a new week. Everybody's excited. Guys pushing each other, yelling around. Everybody thinks that. And did you notice there was a touch of spring in the air, friends? A touch of spring in the air today. And I might as well warn you, when spring comes along, man, I want to tell you, there's some terrible electricity goes through my veins. And this Sunday, I'm flying out high over Jersey. This past Sunday, I was in an airplane. Don't be smart. I was flying in an airplane high over Jersey. And I was flying this airplane, and it was a beautiful day. I mean, for Jersey, that is. And you could see down there that nice, soft, blue silver haze. There's a Jersey haze, which pilots know about. They call it Jersey haze. And it sort of hangs about 500 feet above the surface of the earth on a soft, cool, silvery, woolly blanket of haze. And through it you can see an occasional glint of a Howard Johnson. And you're looking down at Jersey. And I went sailing along Route 27, and I went out along Route 22, and I drifted at 2,500 feet out over the big water they have over there, the big, it's a tremendous, it's where Jersey gets its drinking water. It's bad stuff. I mean, you can see the frogs from 2,500 feet up there, see? And we're drifting along over that big body of water. And down below me, I can see Route 22. You can see the Jersey natives. It's spring. They're out. One of the things I like about spring, you're going over to New Jersey, is that if you stand real still this time of the year, it's the mating season, and if you stand real still, they'll come out of the bushes, the Jersey natives, and if you don't move at all, they'll come up and they'll eat right out of your hand. It's very exciting, and I'm sailing along, looking down on Route 22, and this is my native land. This is mine. I see Secaucus down there, and I see Hohokus, and nothing is prettier than on a Sunday morning than to look straight down at Union City. Beautiful Union City. And it's very exciting, and the whole thing. It's a springtime, man, brings a madness. And I have a little note here, speaking of Jersey. A little note here says, Flick does live. I was on my way from Union College, Cranford, New Jersey, to a meeting at Ocean City College in Toms River. As I was driving along to the college, I saw, to my amazement, in big block letters on a gigantic water tower, Flick lives. This unique monument is located in Toms River, along with a few other poetic verses which stretch out along the highway. Everybody in Toms River thinks that Flick is a secret black militant located in the area, but I will not let the real secret out. He says the local Ku Klux Klan plans a paint-in to rid these propagandist words off the tower, but my lips are sealed. Shep Flick does live in grand style in Toms River, New Jersey. Oh, do I remember one night I spent in Toms River. Oh, man, Shevitz. I spent the night in Toms River. When I even think of Toms River, my hair slowly begins to, the little hackles in the back of your neck stand up like an animal. You see, like a real animal. Yeah, I'm at Fort Monmouth. I'll tell you, it's fascinating how innocent you can be at certain points in your life, and how you'll do stuff which you would never do if you had even the modicum of sense, had some sense at all. I got this date, see, and I have been, without any warning, I have been shipped. I have been, for a brief time in my Army career, I have been festering in Maryland, right outside of Washington, see, and I'm walking around and I'm getting these dates, and I had this date with this fantastic chick for this big dance at the University of Maryland. And I was all excited, and I was getting my uniform all cleaned and pressed and the whole bit, and it's going to be on Sunday, this big date was. You got it? And I'm walking around all excited about it. I've got my bid. I've been invited. And, nothing is more exciting. Big college-type dance. I'm a yard bird. I've got and she was a great chick, see. Oh, wow. At least I thought so at the time. Now, looking back on it in light of later events, I realized that was a close call. But nevertheless, there she was. And that she was so near and yet so far. Now, men know this thing. Men know the madness that sweeps over them from time to time. And they can't explain it later on. But at the time when the madness is there, it is real. And you can hardly wait. Every minute of the day, you got to see this chick. You got to talk to her. You got to look at her. You got to think about her. And then, time goes on. The next thing you know, you just as soon spend a while down at the Howard Johnson having a Texas Tommy, maybe, or something, say some dull thing. And so, nevertheless, but this is the life. This is life. See, this is true life. I wonder what would have ever happened if Shakespeare had rewritten Romeo and Juliet. I mean, if he'd written a sequel to it, say, and instead of Romeo and Juliet getting knocked off in the end like they did, say, They lived happily ever after. You know how all these lady-type stories, like Rona Jaffe-type stories, in the end, the music comes up, and you see Paula Prentice, some great actress like that, or Suzanne Plachette. She's going off into the sunset with Dean Jones. Typical Walt Disney production, and they are being followed by their friendly Weimaraner, who has learned to speak German and now has a job down at the local college translating German chemistry textbooks, and is so cute. And, it's called My Little Weimaraner, the movie they made on it. So you see, this is the typical American belief, you see, the happily ever... Well, that's not only American, that's life. I mean, after all, we didn't invent fairy stories. We carried them to a little higher level, but we didn't invent them. So the idea being, happily ever after they lived. Dum-da-dum-dum. Happily ever. And you see the prince carrying this chick down from the tower, and he fits the glass slipper on her. Turns out it fits beautifully. Fantastic fit. And the next thing you know, they're in the palace there, and the band is playing, and all the couturiers. All these guys are what? Couturiers. Don't you know what a couturier is? All right, that's a guy that does the upholstery in a palace, and it's a very important guy around a palace because they got a lot of fancy furniture and stuff. And so, nevertheless, the court jester, everybody sings and dances, and the Wicked Witch of the West has been squashed by the house that fell on her, or what is it? There was a story I once read about a spinning wheel that blew up. Somebody named was there somebody named Rumpelstiltskin, something like that. Rumpelstiltskin. Was there such a character as Rumpelstiltskin? Anybody know about that character, or did I invent that? Was that another one of those silly things that Mrs. Ascherschlager in 5th grade invented to keep us quiet? Rumpelstiltskin, it's a silly name. By the way, speaking of, so this is WOR in New York. What a silly call letter for a station. Boy, you can spell that a lot of ways, friends. And you ought to see the way some of them spell it. They put H's and all that. Yeah, Rapunzel. Yeah, there was a guy named Rapunzel in that same story. Was repulsive. Repulsive, yeah, repulsive, with an R-A-P, repulsive. And those are exciting stories. And I remember this Rumpelstiltskin had something to do with repulsive was a girl. That's right, I agree. But this Rumpelstiltskin living in this palace, and I think Rumpelstiltskin had a spinning wheel. I don't recall what that was. And it was a guy named Graybeard. Some named Graybeard was involved in that thing. And he came around, he kept hitting these chicks on top of the head. You remember that? And hanging them up by their feet or something. Oh, terrible story. I don't know what I was reading it for, a little kid, And, I got all deeply involved. There was another one, too, something about I remember they opened up this box and all these bats flew out. It was, I can't remember what that one was about. I just remember you're not supposed to open up boxes that are up in the attic of your house. You'll have bats fly out. That was a good one. And what about those two kids that lived out in the forest, and they went out and they found this house made out of gingerbread? That was a good story. Remember that story? And what were their names? I can remember the boy's name, Samson, but I can't remember the chick's name, Samson and Gretchen. That's it. And they lived out in the woods. And no, I don't think so. Andorra, was that the name of the chick that had that box? Andora's box? It could be, yes, but I know the bats flew out. It was very exciting. All these things, of course, had a deep effect on me, but particularly Samson and Gretchen. These kids had this house. They looked for this place up in the woods, and they found this house made out of gingerbread. I remember it had raisins for doorknobs and all that stuff. If I ever ran into a house like that, I'd be suspicious of it right away. But apparently these kids were not, and they went in there, and it was this old chick living there, yelling around. She was a real bad mother. She was in there and saying these bad things, and I think what happened was Samson stuck her in the oven, didn't he? He baked her, kind of, with a little wild rice on the side. And I thought that was kind of bad scene because, just because she was old and lived in a house made out of gingerbread, you shouldn't do that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, Mrs. Ascherschlager thought that was a good story. Now, I don't know what I'm telling you this for, except that, we're all products of the mythology that we live in, which reminds me, speaking of mythology, the most important myths of our time, of course, can be found in the commercials. If you will, please, Uncle George, hit that hard. Come on, bring it up big, George. This is a commercial. Hey, listen, fellow victims. Eastern 1, the all first-class plane, now flies to 5 cities, man. Isn't that Eastern 1? It's like a presidential plane, you know. Eastern 1 to St. Louis. Whoa, what a come down. It goes to St. Louis. To St. Louis, West Palm Beach. Oh, that's Bucksville. Charlotte, Atlanta, and Montreal. Eastern 1, a select service for a select few. Just 50 passengers on a whisper jet built to carry far more champagne, steaks, the whole bit. A boarding lounge, faster baggage handling. It's one long orgy all the way to St. Louis on the Eastern 1. The all first-class plane to St. Louis, West Palm Beach, Montreal, Charlotte, and Atlanta. Eastern 1. Yeah. Oh, man. No wonder they're rioting in the streets. Dun, 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 dun. That was, yeah, I tell you. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Hey, speaking of riots, friends, tomorrow night, now don't forget, speaking of riots, tomorrow night, guess who? Live, presented by Alpha Series. I'll be as live as a bird, telling rotten stories, hitting people, yelling around, blowing my bazoo, and that will be tomorrow night at Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm glad you wrote it down right for a change. It's going to be at Fairleigh Ridiculous. I'm sorry, it slipped out again. Fairleigh Dickinson University at Madison, New Jersey, the garden spot of the Garden State. Tomorrow night, it's a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. The Recreation Building. Now, don't call up here to ask for tickets. You yucks, you idiots, call up here all day long. You wind up with tickets for the Arlene Francis show. That's what you're going to get. I'll show you. No tickets. All tickets are available at the door. That's 8 o'clock. So you get there early. Come one, come on. You can stand out there and scalp. Buy all the tickets and scalp them. Some little jerk, you know, is going to be doing that. You watch. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Fairleigh Dickinson University. Just comes right out. Madison, New Jersey. The Madison campus. And you watch. Klutzes are going to show up at the Teaneck campus. Watch them. I thought you said the Teaneck campus. Now, why did I say it? They're going to hear it. Okay. I repeat, it's going to be tomorrow at the Madison campus, Madison, New Jersey. Your satisfaction is not guaranteed. Bum, ba-dum, bum. You proceed at your own risk. Dum, da-dum, bum. Well, all right, now. Now, what kind of nuttiness is this? Wait a minute here. I'm getting a call from my producer here. My producer just wants to... Yeah? There will be a special surprise attraction? Well, there will be. Well, this is a surprise to me, honey. A special surprise attraction there will be there. Come and see Shepard. Get busted right on stage, live, in stereo. Oh, yeah, that happened to me. Do you remember the time down at Washington Square? How many of you remember the big mill down at Washington Square with the tiny 3-inch kites? Any of you there? I was busted. Do you remember we were all down there at the big wading pool? It was a Saturday. And all of us showed up with our little kites. And the next thing you know, that big green car with that big light, that big U-light, that big flashing light shows right up. He says, in the car, buddy. Right in front of everybody. That was one of the most public busts, seriously, since that chick down in that one down there in Wall Street. You remember her? Or something. Whatever happened to that chick? You remember her? You remember that? Remember that one? That madness that swept? I guess she's back in the file department now. You know, she can fit. I guess she's there. But that, nevertheless, here I am. I must confess that tonight. Hey, listen, before we start confessing, it's still a little early yet. Before we confess, may I have a little bit of this tab, please? Eesh. Have a little tab. Hey, you notice that's a Midwestern expression you don't hear in the East. Ish. You ever hear that expression? Yeah. See, in the Eastern version of it is yuck. You know, yuck. That's the Eastern version. And that doesn't go in the Midwest because most of the people are named Yuck out there. I mean, or Yuckowski, or, you know, so you can't, here in the East, people go, Yuck. You remember when that was a big thing on the commercials? All these cute little girls going, Ick. Well, the Midwestern version of that is, oh-ish. That's silly. So, you know, you run into something you don't like, you say, oh-ish. So, nevertheless, these are, I think we're living in a masochistic age, and no question about it. For example, I just got a letter from a guy who says, Shepard, I read your latest story in Playboy, and it's fantastic. And you could tell the guy was sick. sick, he writes sideways, and his letters kept going over backwards and all that. I read people's handwritings. About every 3 or 4 days, I get a letter from somebody who says, Shepard, please send me a sample of your handwriting, because I'm going to read your character in this handwriting. I've never done it. I never said nobody's going to read my character. If you're going to read my character, listen to me, man, that's all. It's right there. It's out there for everybody to see. I am not sorry. I'm a little bugged. But I'm not sorry for what I am. I have no regrets. What am I going to do, all right, so I didn't grow out to be Ted Klaczewski. Either did you. Don't laugh. Okay? I don't see you singing like no bird either. Right? And I'll tell you this, I can play my Jews harp better than you can play that rotten accordion you play out there. I mean, half the guys I know on Madison Avenue sit around and play banjos. Bad banjos. They wear these phony straw hats and pretend like they're out of an 1890 jazz band. Forget it. I play an honestly bad Jews harp. I'm honest there, I like honesty. Speaking of honesty, tonight I'm sitting in this Chinese restaurant, with this guy, and Madison Avenue type, great guys for sitting there. Just early tonight, we're having dinner in the Chinese restaurant. Now, I don't know what it is, this masochistic time. He starts telling me how rotten he had it. With a look of satisfaction on his face. He's telling me how bad it was in his school, where he went to school. Oh, boy, it was bad. And he goes on and on. And you remember the days when guys used to talk about how great their schools were? Well, I want to tell you, I told him a story. I finally silenced him, because, anybody that knows anything about the steel mill area of the Midwest, he knows something about hell, that guy. There's no way to parallel it with any place like around here, you see, because no matter how bad the area is around here, you're always an hour and a half from the ocean, at least, Jones Beach, Whereas if you were living in Hammond, Indiana, you were an hour and a half from Gary. And, and if you were in Gary, you were 2 hours and a half from probably the worst town ever in the whole history of the world. And I went to school briefly in this town. It was terrible, fantastic town. If it's a town, in fact, I'm going to give you, I'm going to put you on your mettle, see, mettle. You know how whenever you see a Doris Day movie, there's a lot of misconception that Americans have about America. And one of the misconceptions is that the Midwest is like the sets and the life that people live in the Doris Day movies. They believe that. They really do. Oh, yeah, they. And whenever you say Indiana, people think of barefoot boys with cheeks of tan, with a fishing pole over their shoulder. Right, gang? Right, that's Indiana, right? Well, I'm going to tell you, out in the Midwest, when you mention New York, they always think of Fred Astaire dancing on a piano with Ginger Rogers. That's the way it is right here in Manhattan, right, gang? Oh, nothing but, romance, glamour, and Gene Kelly singing songs like Give My Regards to Broadway, say hello to Herald Square. Oh, give my regards to old Broadway and tell 'em I'll soon be there. Pretty good singing, right, huh? Jack Oakey couldn't have done it better, right? Well, all right, that's not the way. We know that. Can you imagine walking along Times Square tonight and holler, give my regards to Broadway, la-da-da-da-da, Herald Square. Oh, give my regards to old... Oh, come on. That guy's sitting there and he's got that phony nose on. The guy that has the Mouseketeer hats down there, and he's selling you all these obscene T-shirts and all that stuff. This is not the guy they were singing about, that world. Has it occurred to you that Howard Johnson right in Times Square is the U.S. Embassy? For the Outlanders. They come in and they got to have something to hang to. They walk down Times Square. So nevertheless, I'm sitting there with this guy. We're talking about our world. And I said, listen, I went to this school one time, and it was part of Indiana University. And they had this extension campus. Now, people talk about alienation in school. They talk about you being in a vast machine. Well, Indiana is spread all over the state of Indiana. It's not what you think it is. It is not the college that Betty Grable always went to in those old movies, Center College, where Tom Brown played halfback, and they did all that dancing on the library steps and all that stuff. Oh, no. This building, it's a little brick building, see. There we were, this little this little band of searchers after truth that were going to school there on full-time basis because they didn't have space to let you in the real school. So here we were. Already we're second-class citizens. And so we're in this little campus. Now, this town where the campus was on the shores, or right near Lake Michigan, about, maybe 2 or 3 miles away. But the town itself was built entirely. It was like interwoven. It was kind of a lattice work. It was built right in the middle of the most gigantic, the most tremendous refinery complex in America. And so the whole surrounding countryside, you'd stand on the street and you'd look around and you would see storage tanks. Well, you know how it is when you're driving along the Jersey Turnpike and you get there by Interchange 12 and you see all those tanks along that. Those are refineries. Now, if you could multiply that by, say, maybe 100 and put your town in the middle of the tanks, you know how gamey the atmosphere is over there? Well, you multiply that by about 5,000. And the atmosphere is so gamey, it's like you're living in a tremendous sea of rotten cabbage. And once in a while, out of the surface of this rotten cabbage, a bubble would burst of ancient primal methane gas. Goop. Goop. Oh, the air was so gamey in this town that actually there were times when people were afraid to strike matches just in the air. The whole town would go up, just out of spontaneous combustion. Oh, sure, you could go out there. Have you ever seen an octane meter? You know what is an octane meter? Well, an octane meter is a meter that they use to determine the octane of gasoline. And it tells you how much combustibility and so forth is in this fluid. Well, there was a rumor around there that on certain days, when the temperature got to be a certain way, and the wind was blowing in a certain direction, that the octane was very, very close to the standard anti-knock Texaco gas that was being sold around that area. Yeah, you just take a lot of that gas, a lot of that air, and you put it in your tank, and you could go to the beach and drive back. Your car didn't know the difference. And so I'm sitting in the classroom. You want to hear about a great classroom? Whenever you think of college, people who never went to college, they always think of college with this idyllic, bucolic thoughts about it. Because we've been very influenced by the Goodbye, Mr. Chips type movies. Yeah, we really have. And even now, when I teach at NYU down the downtown campus, these guys, they think they go to a bad scene. They always, let me tell you, I remember this one afternoon. It's a beautiful spring day, just like now. That you feel the drive in you. The sap starts to rise in the veins, and you know that excitement that's down deep inside you. It's spring. The world is full of infinite promise, or something. You can't quite put your finger on it. It's life, it's vitality, it's sex, it's everything. It's all there in one big. It's a chocolate brownie, it's the chocolate and nuts. It's all of it, Yeah, it's a Barbra Streisand hitting a clinker. It's it's life. It's a fist fight breaking out back at third base at Yankee Stadium. It's man, and it's like an enormous compost heap. And life is a fascinating subject when you think about it. If you look at a compost heap, what is it? A compost heap? It's a pile of life, is what it really is. And each little individual part of that compost heap is not aware of the compost heap. All that little microscopic organism knows is that it's swinging, man. That's all it knows. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I had this microscope that I got for my birthday. And this microscope is only a little microscope, and you put a drop of water. How they always say, look at all the protozoa in the drop of water, and I get the light bulb on it, and I look at the protozoa, and I see all these little animals swimming around, and you could see them, they really could. Little animals with whiskers and mustaches. There was one that looked like my Uncle Tom. I used to see him in there all the time, and all these little animals swimming around. And I used to wonder what they thought. That's what I thought. I was wondering what they thought. I mean, what life was like if you were a protozoa, what you thought. Well, of course, there is a certain body of opinion that feels that we are a protozoa, only we don't know it. The protozoa doesn't know it either. He doesn't know it. He's protozoa. He figures that He's the highest epitome of life. And so I'm sitting in the classroom there, and we're pursuing truth. I don't recall exactly what the class was. It was some esoteric class like the English derivation of standard English phrases from the ancient languages. Something, really zingy class like that. We're sitting there, and I'm half asleep, and the professor's droning on and on and on. And I remember the day. Yes, it was that class, and he was dissecting the word camera. Now, it's funny when you can remember a specific class, one specific day in a class that meant nothing to you really, except that deep down inside you, it is buried like some seed growing. At that day, I remember that class and this professor. He was sort of a gray man, a serious little guy, the kind of guy who lives from crossword puzzle to crossword puzzle. That's what his life is about. And he loves to work double cross sticks and that sort of thing. That's his biggest kick of the week. And so, getting the New York Times so we can get that puzzle going. And so he's up there droning away, and I'm drifting off. And there was a chick, I remember, in this class at that time that I really was hung on. And her father was a dentist. I don't know why I was hung on, but she had sort of a fat face. And for some reason or other, her name was Betty Lou Morrison. And Betty Lou Morrison is sitting over there, and I'm contemplating Betty Lou Morrison. See, I was directly behind her at about, I'd say at about 5 o'clock, if you can think in terms of an Air Force terminology. I was at about 5 o'clock maybe behind, just looking at her scene. And she was outlined against the windows. Had these Venetian blinds, and the professor is going on, and he's got camera written on the blackboard. And he's got all kinds of Sanskrit words written all over the board with K's and umlauts and little ding-dongs, all of, how these Danish words and all that stuff. And he's going on, now, if you take this word, and if you take a look at the ancient Innsdic language, which was spoken for less than 250 years on the shore of the Mediterranean, blah, blah, blah. And my head is drifting off. I'm looking at Betty Lou. And she was a lot to look at, Betty Lou. She had the tremendous displacement. Betty Lou had a low specific gravity. I had a feeling that if Betty Lou was ever thrown into the lake, she would float infinitely. She had tremendous, she was billowy, that kind of a chick. And I was looking at Betty Lou, and they were droning on and on. I was a GI type, sitting back there, bored out of my skull, and dreaming and thinking about these guys. And I had a copy of Esquire. I remember I had a copy of Esquire, the spring school wardrobe issue. They always have that idyllic life that they lead in those wardrobe ads. You notice the pictures like they show in Playboy or in Esquire. It always shows these guys standing with sheepskin coats and bronze faces sort of painted orange, and you see the leaves turning behind them, and you see this ivy-covered wall behind them, and one of the guys is quietly lounging on the hood of a Maserati, a 1250cc modified race-type Grand Prix. And this is the world that is presented. They never show you a giant demonstration. This guy's wearing his new demonstration coat, that will ward off slings and arrows and stuff like that. And so they never show our type of school, where you look out of the window and you don't see any ivy. You just see the refineries all around you, nothing but tanks, and you see these big. You know what a cracking plant is, friend? You don't, huh? Well, how come I know all this stuff? I wish I didn't, but I do. If you drive along the turnpike, have you noticed that big thing that looks like a big Christmas tree with all the lights lit up all over it? Yeah, it's high. It sticks up 7-8 stories in the air, you see, and there's usually a big flame coming out somewhere near the top of it, and it's got lights all over it, pipes. It looks like a gigantic pile of pipes. Well, that's a cracking plant. And cracking plant takes the raw petroleum and it cracks it and makes it into its various components, like petroleum, or rather like, say, wax, kerosene, high-octane oil, benzene, benzol. It's a big still is what it is. And here they were all, and boy, are they stinky. That's what makes the smell. They're cooking that stuff, see? And that stuff drifts up into the air. And you could smell the fly tox division. Right outside of our window, they were making insecticide, that they make out of petroleum. And so I'm sitting there looking at Betty Lou Morrison, and I'm smelling the fly tox. And this guy's talking about camera, in hoc, agricula conch, Sanskrit est, spittle lauk, and he's going through the derivation. and I'm half-heartedly making a few notes. I keep writing camera down, spelling it with a K, and I'm looking at Betty Lou Morrison. You know, that drifting and dreaming quality. And I got this copy of Esquire, and here's a picture of the splendid chappies at Princeton and what they will be wearing for the fall semester. I'm dreaming. Oh boy, look at that. Those guys are going to a real school when all of a sudden it happened. All of us are sitting there working away and dreaming along, and it's the middle of a very early spring day, and it's beautiful. At least beautiful for that part of the country, because you see, it was the first time you could actually suspect that behind that gray swirling mass of clouds and smell there was a sun. It was trickling down when it happened. It just was at first innocent. You know, the worst things are innocent. Just a little sound. But we all knew, because all of us had grown up in that area. Just a sound. It went boom. That's all. It didn't go off with a roar. You know, the world will end with a whimper. It went boom. Sort of it's like somebody has taken a big wet dishcloth and has slapped it right in the middle of a bass drum. Plump. And everything hung there for just a second. And then the light in the room, which was the gray, milky spring sunshine that was coming in through the Venetian blinds, suddenly changed color. It was kind of mustard yellow. Just like that. And all of us leaped up. And as one man, we rushed to the windows and looked out. And there it was. Half a block away, there was this tremendous mushroom cloud. Have you ever seen a mushroom cloud? A real mushroom cloud. Just exactly the way you see pictures of an atomic bomb. It was a mushroom cloud, a big column that went up in the air, maybe 5,000 feet. And at the top, it was flat, real flat, like big rolling clouds rolling outward from that center column. And we stood there with our mouths hanging open. And it was a bright canary yellow cloud. It was a spectacular cloud. And for an instant, everything just sort of hung there. And you saw this cloud going up and up and up and up and up and rolling out. And it was rolling out. You could see it now. It was covering the top of our building. You could look right up and you could see the bottom of that big flat top. And you could see it extending for maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 miles off to the right, all around. This tremendous thing. And then you begin to hear people. See, we were up on the 4th floor of this building. And you heard people calling. You see the people running around down there. Did you see the movie the other night on TV, The Day the World Stopped? It was like that. You saw people running out of their houses. We were watching, running out of their houses, looking up, and you saw ladies screaming and yelling, and they were running around in their backyards, taking their laundry down. And then we saw, drifting down from the sky, was this soft, soaking, continuous downpour of raw kerosene. The entire county was being soaked with kerosene. It was an enormous mushroom cloud made out of kerosene that had gone 5,000 feet in the air. If you think you've seen smog, friends, you ought to breathe in raw kerosene. It's just drifting down over the entire county. All the houses that had been painted, all the people with the laundry, guys walking around with their sports shirts. Every car within miles was covered with a thick mine sitting out there. Oh, in the parking lot, I was crying. I had this convertible, and it had one of these white canvas tops, you know, the time, and I used to scrub it all the time. Make that top white. I could see the kerosene drifting down on it. And we just sat there, breathing in the kerosene. Everything soaked for miles around and smelling like rotten skunk cabbage. And the professor went on. Now, let us take the word. Let us take the word standardize. Now, that word, and on it went. Every car within miles was soaked with kerosene. And for months after that, no matter what you ate, no matter what you drank, no matter where you went, you'd go to a restaurant and you'd pick up this chicken drumstick. Kerosene. You'd drink a glass of beer. And it came out of a bottle. You drink it? Kerosene. No matter what happened, it was kerosene. But the people didn't complain. Just part of life, you know? Just part of life. And oh, by the way, 2 or 3 months afterwards, all the paint started to peel off of the cars because the kerosene did something to the paint that dissolved the solvents or something in the paint. And the professor went on, and once in a while he'd take his handkerchief off and he'd wipe the kerosene off the top of his bald head. The pursuit of higher learning. Princeton was never like this. These little moments, these beautiful moments. Oh, I could tell you about the time that... No, I don't want to tell you about that. The time one of the cracking plants blew up when we were driving over the river. I was a kid. It blew up maybe 200 or 300 feet from us, and all the windows in the car just came caving inwards. The old man just drove on without a backward glance. I mean, you know, that's all part of the little hazards of life. By the way, how are you doing with your backswing, friends? Speaking of backswings, tomorrow night, Fairleigh Dickinson, Madison campus, 8 o'clock, New Jersey. Tickets available only at the door. Be there. That is an assignment. That is a direct order. Be there.